Picture this. A queen dressed in shimmering silk, her gown cascading in layers of velvet and lace, walking gracefully through the grand halls of a palace. Her every move is watched, her words measured, and her presence carefully rehearsed. But behind that regal poise is a hidden reality, one that would never appear in a royal portrait. Each month, she's not just tending to a natural bodily rhythm. She's navigating an entire political minefield. Her cycle is not private. It's public knowledge. It's recorded, decoded, reported, and even examined. And in a world where dynasties hinge on fertility, even the most personal experiences become instruments of diplomacy and control. Today, we unravel the astonishing little-known truth of how royal women in the 1600s and beyond dealt with their periods. From the challenges of managing menstruation under towering dresses, to the rituals surrounding cleaning and inspection, to the sometimes dangerous methods used to treat irregularities. This is the story of queens, courtiers, and a reality they could never speak of aloud. State affairs. In royal households of the 17th and 18th centuries, a woman's physical body was more than her own. It was tied to the fate of dynasties. Her health, her fertility, and her cycles were not only monitored by palace doctors, but they were also relayed in letters to monarchs, nobles, and foreign diplomats. The simple fact of menstruation could be interpreted as a sign of failure or hope. A delay in a queen's cycle could trigger a flurry of anxiety throughout the court. Was she pregnant? Had she miscarried? Was something medically wrong? These weren't private concerns. These were state affairs. Sometimes entire councils would be informed of such news through carefully worded, coded documents drafted by physicians and approved by court officials. In some cases, the timing of royal marriages, treaties, and coronations hinged on whether a queen's cycle was regular. In short, her biology was no longer her own. It had been nationalized. Fashion. Now, imagine managing all of this while trapped inside a fortress of fashion. Royal dresses during this era were not simply beautiful, they were structural feats. Gowns weighed as much as a small child with petticoats, hoops, stays, panniers, and corsets, all layered together to achieve the ideal silhouette. These outfits were not easy to maneuver in, let alone practical for someone experiencing a period. Managing menstrual flow required immense planning and help. The cloth pads used at the time were tied with belts or fastened with ribbons, often worn tightly under corsets and long undergarments. Changing these cloths meant partial or full undressing, which was only possible with the assistance of trusted attendants. This had to happen multiple times a day, sometimes during long ceremonies or events where exiting was not always discreet. And leaks, they weren't just a worry, they were a potential scandal. Staining a cushion or royal chair could spark gossip or worse speculation about a potential pregnancy loss. So women had to remain alert, composed, and in control at all times while wearing garments that made even sitting a challenge. And yet they carried themselves with grace, attending court, dancing at banquets, and greeting guests while quietly managing a situation no one was allowed to acknowledge. Ladies in waiting. These queens and princesses didn't face this alone. They had a carefully selected circle of women known as ladies in waiting, whose duties extended far beyond what we might expect today. Among their most sensitive tasks was the management of the queen's menstrual needs. These women weren't just close confidants, they were also bound by loyalty, class, and in many cases, family ties. Only noble women were trusted with such intimate responsibilities. Why? Because knowledge of a queen's menstrual status was politically sensitive. It could not fall into the hands of gossipy commoners or rival factions. Each month, these attendants helped change linens, discreetly dispose of or wash stained cloths, assist with wardrobe changes, and monitor the queen's comfort. They kept records, passed information to the court physician, and knew more about the queen's health than anyone else in the palace. Their presence was essential, yet they had to remain invisible. They were the guardians of the Queen's most private reality, holding secrets that could change the future of entire nations if mishandled. Cleaning cloths. The cloths themselves were rarely ordinary. Many were custom-made from fine cotton, delicate linen, or imported silks. Some were even embroidered or trimmed for added luxury. But once stained, they could not simply be thrown away. Not just because of their value, but because of what they symbolized. Used cloths were first examined, then processed through a strict cleaning ritual. They were soaked in cold water, sometimes scented or infused with salt, vinegar, or wine to dissolve blood. After soaking, they were scrubbed by hand, usually with soaps made from animal fat and lye. This wasn't done by the Queen, of course, but by skilled attendants or laresses who specialized in cleaning delicate items. However, even these helpers were under close supervision. In some courts, physicians would observe the water used during washing. They believed it could reveal signs of imbalance or disease, and some even claimed to detect poisoning from the blood's color or smell. The process could take days. Cloths were washed, dried carefully, and pressed before being returned for reuse. But what was just another chore to servants was a cycle of medical and political interpretation to those in charge. Physical checkups. As strange as it may seem today, royal women were subjected to regular physical checkups, especially when their cycles became irregular or stopped altogether. These examinations were neither gentle nor private. Physicians would often inspect the cloths themselves before moving on to more personal assessments. Without modern tools or proper hygiene, these internal examinations could be extremely uncomfortable. Some women reported infections or pain lasting for days afterward. Still, the information gained from these procedures was considered crucial. Fertility was everything. If a queen wasn't showing signs of pregnancy, physicians wanted to know why, and immediately. Queen Catherine of Banza, the Portuguese wife of England's Charles II, endured years of such assessments. With every month that passed without an heir, pressure mounted, and treatments grew more invasive. The Queen's body became less her own and more a subject of constant monitoring. What began as concern turned into surveillance, one she could never escape. Remedies. When regular cycles didn't return on their own, court physicians turned to remedies, many of which did far more harm than good. Mercury, for instance, was a common ingredient in fertility tonics. It was believed to stimulate the womb and cleansed the body. In reality, it slowly poisoned the nervous system and internal organs. Symptoms of mercury exposure, such as tremors, mood swings, and fatigue, were often mistaken for signs of womanly hysteria. Lead powders were applied to mask bodily odor, including those associated with menstruation. These powders were worn on the face and sprinkled on undergarments. While effective at masking smell, they quietly accumulated in the body, damaging reproductive function and mental clarity. Bloodletting was another widespread practice. Even during menstruation, additional blood would be drawn from the arms or legs to balance the body. These procedures done with crude instruments left women pale, weak, and vulnerable to infection. Princess Charlotte of Wales, young, beloved, and under immense pressure, endured years of such treatments. Her early death in 1817 is often attributed in part to the cumulative effects of these misguided medical practices. Despite all this, a royal woman could never appear tired or unwell. The rules of the court demanded constant elegance. Even while managing pain, fatigue, or the risk of bleeding through costly fabrics, she had to carry herself with charm and composure. There were no sick days. Balls continued. Portraits were painted. Ceremonies took place. Corsets had to be laced tightly, gowns arranged flawlessly, and appearances kept immaculate. Behind the scenes, attendants made adjustments, secret wardrobe changes, quick freshen-ups, quiet hand signals to signal discomfort. But in public, no one could ever know. Many royal women expressed the emotional toll this silence took. In personal letters, they admitted to feeling trapped, not just by expectation, but by the need to pretend nothing was happening. Duchess Elizabeth Charlotte of Orleans confessed her frustration in her writings, describing how exhausting it was to be discussed like a vessel, examined without choice, and expected to smile through it all. The history of royal women often showcases their jewels, gowns, and palaces, but the truth of their daily lives tells a very different story. Beneath every jeweled crown was a woman navigating a system that saw her value in terms of reproduction. Every month her cycle was more than personal. It was political. It was tracked, managed, and even used against her. She couldn't speak openly about it. She couldn't pause her duties, and she certainly couldn't control how it was interpreted. But she endured. So the next time you stand before a portrait of a queen, remember that beneath the silk, lace, and gold stood a woman of incredible quiet strength, someone who bore not just the burden of a crown, but the weight of being a woman in a world that made her biology a matter of state.